Welcome to the Disrupt Education podcast. Alli Privitt is here with me. Hi, Alli.
Hi, Peter. We're back at it again.
Here we go. Yes. So I wanted to start this whole conversation with the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the doom and the gloom, and the optimist, I guess, and the pessimist. Trying to put that together in a poem, and it didn't work there. But so I'm working on a play, not a play, an actual script. So I'm actually writing a movie with a bunch of friends of mine in the teaching industry and around the teaching industry, and there's parents and such, and it's fun. Somehow we're going to sell this thing. But what happened the other day when we were sitting down and writing, the two of us are kind of the main writers, and then we're finding, different stories. And it was interesting because the other person writing the movie with me basically said, I don't know why you're still in education because it's never going to change. And I was like, what? What?
Never?
Never. Like, it's never going to change. And it's always going to be the same. So it was obviously a very pessimistic view. I can understand it. I'm definitely not going to agree with it. But I think that's where we start today, right? The camps of doom and gloom and the camps of what can we do? Where are these missed opportunities? And who's actually doing things about it? I don't know. Do you see those two camps?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting about this series is that my mind goes there and has totally been in this space where you feel like a cog in a wheel and you can't make real change. And it's interesting because even in education, right, like it can feel like such a big elephant and such a big, kind of out there, like how do I really connect this whole idea of how do we make more connections and disrupt education and find ways to connect it to real life. And it can be so easy to be in the doom and gloom field of just saying like, oh, well, we can't do anything. And so like you become very apathetic and you don't try and make changes versus this idea that there are ways to make real change, but it doesn't need to look like maybe what you're thinking of, like this complete overhaul in a year. That's not realistic. Mm-hmm. But how do you kind of make change in a way that doesn't, where you don't just sit in this camp or like nothing can be done.
Right.
Nothing can be done.
I think this is two words, what if, right? Like, I think you start with those words on optimism. What if we did something different? Going back to the college visit of my son, I always want to kind of go back into that because that's what's now, right? He's visiting college. He got a lot of friends. The assumption is this is the route. There's no other route. That's it. And there's a stagnation. I'll call it like college stagnation. And in that whole piece, like my son knows, and a lot of his friends and frankly, a lot of students that I work with know that there are alternatives to the opportunities that colleges and universities are giving, right? But we're still doing like 30 years ago, Alli. I know I'm older than you. 30 years ago, I went through a college kind of tour and it was exactly the same, minus a few little knickknacks. Maybe the water cooler was pretty neat. They use aluminum instead of plastic now. I don't know. Like there's little pieces that are slightly different, but the facilities are Four Season-ish. I'll say like kind of resort-ish. But outside of that, everything was the same. You got to get the degree. I don't know.
Why?
Yeah.
And why? Like, so something that I see here more and more as an educator is kids are woke and they are willing to explore other options. It was really in the last few years that I started hearing kids talk about, wanting to be influencers and not pursue a degree. And if colleges are selling this idea like, well, come and find yourself, a six-figure investment to find yourself, when, as the Gary V's of the world will say, hey, just send your kids to the Four Seasons and send them for a year for $100,000 so they can find themselves, and then they can go get a job doing whatever. And so what are we missing in education that could get kids to realize, or colleges to kind of connect with kids and show like this is really valuable? Like, I think college is a super valuable tool, and I wouldn't take back my college experience for anything. But if what you're saying 30 years ago, the recruitment process, the experience felt like eerily similar, what are we missing here to kind of bring on a new generation? And I don't want to be like, oh, doom and gloom, like colleges need to, like, like, oh, you're missing out on all these kids.
Right.
And yet, like, what happens when you are missing kids now in a totally new way than you ever have before?
Right.
I didn't know that there were really other options when I'll be honest, like, I literally thought the route to success was get a high school degree, get a college degree, get a job, do that job, retire. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Linear.
Very linear. Not the world that we live in today. But that's not the kids, your kid, the students that we have, that's not their reality, and that's not their parents. Like, the parents, I think, are more skeptical of the system too.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we're between these interesting generations of parents, right? And, some did okay. I mean, I'm just going to stereotype here, but like the majority of, like, I was a Gen Xer. So Gen Xers, yeah, I mean, it took us a little time out of college. And, the cost of things were not quite as high as they are now, even with inflation calculated in. And we did okay. I finally found what I was supposed to be doing a few years after my college degree, my bachelor's degree. But also, like, the generation after me really got killed, right? Like, you had these, the costs of living skyrocketed, the cost of education skyrocketed, the cost of living in general, like food and all these different things, in consideration of all the calculations that go along with, how much I had to pay versus what they had to pay. And I'm not even going to go into my parents, but now they're parents. And so now they're asking these questions. So I think one of the things that I did see that was slightly different, which was sort of an opportunity emerging from colleges. Because I agree with you. I just tweeted the other day, like, just because I ask a lot of questions or question high school and college, right? It doesn't mean I hate it. Everybody's like, oh, you just hate it, because in these days you can't, like, question something. And, and I think that's the naysayers. I think there's just these opportunities to where at this college and university that we went to, my son and I, there was a little bit more emphasis on the career center, right? It was brighter. There was a few more people in it. It was still small, but it was a back office when I was in school and no one even knew it existed. So I think they're starting to marry that a little bit. Why wouldn't you on a tour have, like, companies there on the tour saying, hey, we're looking for kids like you in 4 years to come through here, learn who you are. We're going to be working with you throughout, and here are the skills that you're going to get, not just this, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
It's this anchoring and setting the stage of, like, this space, this educational space, whether it's high school, whether it's a tech school, whether it's a college, like, where are kids anchoring their knowledge? And companies, if they're really trying to have good working relationships with the up and coming workforce, why, like, again, it's a two-way street. Like, there's a huge missed opportunity there to have more linking, more, like, this idea of really starting small and growing, like, local community networks where they aren't in these silos. They really do talk to one another. And I get, like, it, you can look at that and be like, oh, it's such a big problem to solve, but it's like, well, what can we do? And that's where I think you have to get out of this this mindset of, well, this is just how we've always done it, and being like, where are the what ifs? Like, what if we tried this? Like, what if there was, as I know for both of us that our kids light up the most
Hmm.
when we're talking about something, like how what we're learning applies to outside of the room that we're in,
Yeah,
that
100%.
real life stuff. And if kids have like, oh wow, this company is doing this really awesome stuff, now they're in class and they're like, oh my gosh, I really want to learn this, and
Hmm.
now you're like motivated so much more because you have a reason for that knowledge, not just, oh, because I'm taking a test.
Right, right. I think, and along with that, one of the things that I'm like, I see that is starting to happen, and trust me, down the line here, we're gonna have some really interesting guests who's talking about some different ways that even high schools or schools in general, and then post secondary schools are doing this. But I always felt like the MBA, where they would bring in a business and then that was your case study, right? I feel like that needs to be something that we do more in not only, your bachelor's degree area with the community, because we'll talk about community ties of colleges, like how do they tie into the communities they're there with, and then even into the high school and even in the middle school and elementary levels where you're actually doing more for the community, right? So let me go back to college, for instance. I went to Valparaiso University. It's a great university, small, very small. I was a little afraid to go anywhere. But the connection with the town was basically we were going to spend a lot of money and eat and maybe entertain ourselves. And, there was a water park up the street and such. The football game, I guess, or the basketball games and volleyball games and things like that. But there really wasn't connection, but there was opportunity there. I don't know what I wanted to kind of go back if you could think into your college experience. What was the connection between the community and the college, or was there one? I mean, it was very kind
So
of fuzzy for me.
yeah, no, I went to Truman State University, which
Hmm.
is in a small town, and the the university is a huge economic boom
Hmm.
for the community, right? And so for a lot of businesses, like the fact that we even had a Walmart in a town of 17,000 is a
Hmm.
pretty big deal, but it was because of the university. And I will say that I felt like my degree program and everything, we were out in the community doing like stream cleanups, and there were all these like runs that were raising money for the local high school or the community center. I remember the YMCA hosting like kids nights, and the college kids would be volunteering. It wasn't so much
Hmm.
businesses though. I will say that just because of the size of the town, it wasn't lost in a big city, and I think that's kind of a like where there was more opportunity, and the professors who worked there, they lived there.
Nice.
So they were integrated. And I think actually now, as you're kind of bringing this idea forth, I'm thinking, wow, it was a small community, and they really, I felt super ingrained in that
Hmm.
community and I was invested in it. I loved those 4 years beyond. I kind of saw my like place in them. Right
Yeah.
beyond the coursework. And I did this really cool, now that we're talking about this really cool, it was working with a local nonprofit on fluoridation of the water source.
Wow.
And we created a radio spot. And we like did community research and kind of focus groups. And like we were out there partnering with the community, and that was for a class.
Yes,
We
that's
had to
what I
like
was going to ask.
design.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was for a class, and it was a project-based class. And I, to this day, that radio spot ran for years.
Hmm.
And, like what a way to make an impact. And I mean, we had to drive like an hour and a half away to a little rural area in Missouri and just do this. But the professors did such a good job. Like now that I'm really like like cycling through these memories, and I'm
Right.
thinking, wow, like all of a lot of my classes were linked, but the professors were very, very, very much integrated into that community. They
Hmm.
weren't in this pit of opportunities. It's like you got Kirksville, so you might as well make it work.
Yeah, right. No, I say I like that. Number one, I want to hear that commercial. We got to find that commercial somewhere. You
I
did.
have it. I do.
I think the other thing though is if I heard the university say that as I was walking through with my son, or even my son heard that, I really feel like that's what this generation wants. Like this generation wants to be ingrained and also get that credit, quote unquote credit. The things that we did, and maybe I just didn't look, and I don't want to blame, the school I went to, but I think these things should be super evident to youth, and that it's not just, I mean, we had fraternities and sororities and such. It's not just external like it is in high school or in middle school, which it shouldn't be there either, in my opinion. But like, how can we ingrain that? And then number one, like sell it, right? So you're in this community. We work with, I feel like a lot of Ivies may do this, or elite schools. I don't know though. There's always a branding thing, and that's a whole nother run. But yeah, I really think that's an amazing piece that you had an opportunity to do. But was it even sold to you, or was it just you got there and you're like, oh, we're doing this. This is cool. I think
Yeah,
that
it was
might
like
be
part of the experience. But I do remember going on the tour, and it was by a college kid.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't an adult, and
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was being sold the campus. And yeah, it was beautiful on its own accord. And I remember it was all story based. I don't remember all of the stories. I do remember her just sharing like, you know, this is where we hold this event. And I felt like the events were really integrated. And I do remember her saying a lot like, oh, you'll see the local Kirksvillians like, walking the square, and we're really enmeshed, with each other. And that was true. It was in the heart of the town. So
What was the name? Kirkvillian? What'd you say?
I just made that up. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know.
I think that's awesome. That should be like, the
Kirksvillians.
Kirksvillians. That's sweet. It's almost like villain, but just, tough enough that we can do it, the Kirkville. I love that. Well, I think, yeah, number one, a great tour guide can really get anybody, right? So, which is interesting. But you see these things, and I think these are the opportunities that are out there that everybody is not looking at, right? There are little pieces of this. If we just take a moment and really reflect on what we're doing in our middle, high school, elementary, college, universities, etc., I think if we look at it that way, we start talking about those two camps again, right? The doom and gloom, it's like nothing's going to change, which my partner was like, it's never going to change. Like he was legit telling me it's not going to change. And I was like, I refuse to accept that. I mean, I can accept his thought process. I'll accept his opinion. But I'll agree to disagree. I'm like, no, it can't. Like, I think you start asking yourself, do you want your grandkids to do the exact same thing? I mean, come on. I mean, right now it's ridiculous. How ridiculous is it going to be like 45, 50 years from now? So
I agree. I
yeah.
agree. Just with the opportunity that's out there to kind of really enmesh reality with, and not alternative reality, like actual,
Yeah.
not virtual reality, like actual reality with academia in a
Hmm.
more like very outright aligned, in your face kind of way.
And I think I'm going to end on thinking about, okay, what are the opportunities that your kids see that everybody else is missing, right? So I think about my own son, or even some of the kids going to college. And when you said the non-linear route versus linear, I kind of see the linear as something that is doom and gloom, right? Like it's linear, but it's never been linear, right? It's never been linear, has it? I mean, maybe way back in the 60s. I don't know. But I don't think it's ever been linear, right? I don't know. My path wasn't linear. I can tell you
Nope.
that. So
Mine wasn't linear either,
right.
but yet, you just saying that, it from a high schooler's perspective, they think it needs to be linear.
100%.
We aren't making it I mean, I know I would have conversations with kids and they would be like, "What? I can do that? I don't
Yes.
have to like
Yeah.
decide?" I'm like, "Yeah, you don't have to decide. You don't have to do this. I mean, you can
Yeah.
explore options, but it's maybe that's just where you're at in high school is that like you are just a more linear thinker, but that's the opportunity, right? To
Hmm.
like think outside of the box, to create different opportunities that are connect with people that don't necessarily want a linear route. And this more, I don't know if it was protected, the
Yes.
linearity of it.
Yes.
It's not protected anymore. People are fully aware or
Hmm.
more aware than ever
Yeah.
of their options.
Yeah. Right.
Like, and that is what we're going to explore more. We've got some awesome guests coming up on this
Yes.
series
Yeah.
that
People who
are
are, yeah, they're
doing
unwilling
innovative
to
stuff.
settle. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, right, if you're like listening to this and you're like, well, what are people doing outside of, just selling the college education in the linear format? There are amazing people doing amazing work. And that's this series, beyond just exploring missed opportunities, is going to show people doing that work and what it could look like in your own local community.
People building schools at the K through 12 level, post secondary. We've got a lot of interesting people coming up. It's going to be great. Everybody, and I say that everybody is closer to their fulfillment and their success than they think they are if they look at it in a nonlinear way. I swear to you, I see it all the time. So we'll leave it with that. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back again talking a little bit more about some interesting things this tour. I got to keep going on this tour. I got another piece of this tour and how my son is going through it. But thank you all for listening, and we'll check you in a week on Disrupt Education.